Hey, it's Kimike, and we just got the finale for Season 4 of Vikings, Episode 20, and it was incredible. There was so much in it, and it felt like a really good episode. It really ended off the season very nicely for me. There were a few things in there that a lot of people didn't really like that much, but definitely had a lot of impact on me. I thought it was one of the best episodes we got this entire season. So we got the entire episode focused on just what was happening in England. We got no Kattegat or anything else, but it still was extremely interesting the whole way through. We had some big deaths, some moving on of characters, and some real closure to some storylines that were really building up over Season 4. So without further wait, let's go into the video. So we begin right where we left off at episode 19, with the army charging into the shield wall of the Vikings. And it looks to be very bloody all the way through, and the English forces just get absolutely hammered by the Vikings, and they end up retreating, and Aethelwulf survives. Now, as soon as the Wessex forces disengaged and started running away and retreat, a lot of the Vikings kind of gave up, just yelled at them and started cheering because they'd won the battle, of course. Now, Bjorn always gives this concerned look because he's looking to the future and what's going to happen next. He sees that Aethelwulf got away, and he knows that they'll regather their forces and attack them again, and this fight is not done. I feel like he personally doesn't want to carry on this venture because he feels like he reaches his revenge, definitely in this episode, but it's definitely more of a challenge for Ivar and the people who stayed at conquest in England. That will be their challenge going forward. So Aethelwulf rocks up, he says, we've lost the battle, we need to get out of here, regroup so we can win another day in a more defended place. And this is when Egbert says, no, I want to stay. I know the last thing I can do. He saw what Ragnar did with his death, and how he used his dying and his way of death to really forward his legacy, to push his ideas because he had nothing left. This is the exact situation Egbert finds himself in right now, where he's losing his mind, he's losing his grip on his rule, and he's got this terrible Viking force that's taking over his kingdom and betraying everything his legacy has built up to. So only his death is the last thing he can do to forward towards his legacy, and this is what he does later in this episode. One thing I really did like from this little scene here was the way that Aethelwulf and Egbert really had that final last closure to their chapter and their relationship together. It was a cross between the formal and respectable nature of their relationship that's always been because he was king and he was the son to the king, and then that kind of more personal level. He's like, I don't want to let you die. I don't particularly like you the best, but you're my father and I can't let you die in this horrible way. And Egbert just says, trust me this one last time. You can be king now. Your time to rule. It's now me over and all you. And I feel like he's completely comfortable with that. He's actually probably pretty happy with it. His mind's more focused on the future of his people, and he's ready to just let his father do what he wants to do in his crazy last hours. So then we have this funny montage from this point on, where Egbert's going around saying his farewells and stuff like that. Everyone's just trying to rush to leave. They're like kind of like, oh yeah, we understand what you're doing. Yeah, let's go, cool. Let's get out of here. Let's go. And he's just getting in their way. I was laughing pretty much the whole way through this little sequence here when he was just getting in everyone's way, and everyone's like, no, you're not king anymore, we respect you still enough just to not fuck with you for this little bit here, but we kind of need to go, there's a Viking army coming. I thought that was pretty neat. The one thing I did notice though was that Alfred definitely took him more seriously and gave a proper good goodbye to him, because Alfred's always had a more connection with Egbert than anyone else really. So that definitely gives me the idea that he'll be more of a kind of ruler like the same way that Egbert was, but maybe a little bit more kind and Athelstan-like. So Aethelwulf is crowned king, and he moves on with his forces to regroup, where Bishop Edmund and King Egbert stay behind with a few little soldiers to protect them as they wait for the Viking forces to really take over, and Egbert can do his very last plan to be able to manipulate the Vikings and really help his kingdom with one last act. Okay, so Bjorn and the other sons Ragnar finally arrive with their army, they break through the gates, they get in, they see that everyone's missing, that no one's really there, because they've cleared out, of course, regrouping their forces. This is a victory to most of the Vikings, and of course, again, Bjorn understands this is no victory, of course. If they had found them with their pants down and be able to take them out, the king and all that kind of stuff, it would have been way better. So as Vikings do, they break down and burn everything they can get their hands on to really leave their mark. And of course, they find the bishop, they kill the guards, they come in, and this is a big moment for Floki, I think, because it's just another one of those hits as he sees a very religious person, someone like in the same depth of religion and servitude as he is in a different faith, and it really hits him again the same way he did when he was in that mosque in Spain. Also, King Egbert comes out very annoyed with all the burning and no one really coming to confront him, so he goes out on his own, quite mad looking actually, and walks straight up to Bjorn and just looks at him him, and then Bjorn understands that this is the king, and they need him for bargaining tools, for revenge, for whatever they can use a king for. He's better alive than dead for now, so they can discuss what to do with him. So they capture him instead of just killing him on the spot. Now this is the third time the show has really showed us how Bjorn thinks very much like a leader and how he can use everything he gets to his advantage in the true scenarios areas. He's more of a Ragnar, a thinker, a planner, than a more vicious warrior type person. This is the type of Bjorn I really want to see more of as we go into Mediterranean in the next season, because it's the kind of Bjorn that I really can back and makes us want to support that character over some of the other Vikings who are quite more vicious and bloodlusty. Now this is when we get that final climax to the whole Helga and Floki relationship with that small girl that they took as a slave. This is when it finally breaks, as her over-obsessively controlling her and scaring her leads to her getting a knife somehow in this ruins somewhere, killing her and then killing herself to try and escape this world. This of course is a huge blow to Floki. This character has been around since Season 1, a very important character, a likeable character. Apart from recently with a few other things she's doing with obsessive over this child and stuff, she's always been a character I really enjoyed throughout the season, so it was a really big hit this episode to see her die. And of course it cuts the strings that Floki's had all this season with her. It felt like Floki really needed to flourish and do something big like he always tries to do as he pents up in his mind. But this was really one thing that grounded him in his reality of being a Floki character, as part of Viking society, and this really cuts him loose to be able to become a vessel of the gods like he really wanted to do. And this will probably lead to him fulfilling a lot more of his sagas, like discovering Iceland. But I definitely expect a lot more lone wolf type of storyline for Floki in Season 5. So next we get this meeting between the sons of Ragnar with Egbert up in a cage in the ceiling, which is so ironic because it's exactly how Ragnar was treated when he was first captured by Wessex. It just draws more and more parallels between the way that Ragnar died and Egbert going to die. So the sons have a very interesting conversation about what to do with Egbert now that they've captured him and how they're going to really expand from this point on in England. Ivor of course wants to blood evil Egbert and attack more places and just raid and be violent, everything that really fits his character, where Bjorn thinks they can use Egbert for a very good strategy to be able to gain land, kingdoms, and fulfill his father's dreams. In the end, they can't really come to agreement, so Egbert interjects and gives him a proposal that Bjorn really likes. This was Egbert's plan from the start, to be able to dethrone himself, give it away to Adelwulf, and use that last little pitch effort of pretending to be king as he's captured to make them really distracted and break apart, and make them like take a bit of land, defend it, and not really expand further into his kingdoms and stuff, so that it gives time for England to regain their forces and push them out. This plan is actually very good because it stops the Viking forces from snowballing from the wins that they've previously had, which give Adelwulf the ability to be able to reform his army around new tactics and understanding how Vikings fight. Also as a side consequence, this ended up making more divisions between Ivor and the other brothers, which leads to his outburst later on in the episode. So, the second big death of the episode is Egbert. He's someone who's really struggled a lot of the time with these conflicts between what the gods are real, death, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So this is a very big psychological moment for him. And I felt like this episode really closed his character really well. It wasn't as great as Ragnar, but it definitely felt like it wasn't just a cheap death. So that was definitely a highlight to the episode. They've closed out 2 deaths with Helga and Egbert very well this episode. So, of course, they're going to close out any other deaths episode really well as well. Nope. Now it's come time to look at the big feast scene where everyone declares their intentions and what they're going to do with the future. Funnily enough, this is one of the few times we ever get to see Sigurd on his lute. And then in the same episode, they talk about how he's always playing music and not really manly, which to me feels like a cheap way of foreshadowing, because they really should have played that a lot more throughout the seasons and stuff, made it a very central part of his character, but they didn't. They just kind of glossed over it, and so when they came to bring it up now, they really had to just shove it in there quickly before they talked about it. So in this scene we find out that Bjorn feels like they've accomplished very much in England. They've got what they need, they've prepared to make a farming settlement, and he's ready to move on to his next adventure of going back to the Mediterranean so that he can fulfill his true desires rather than just revenging Ragnar. This also leads to one of the Fine-Haired brothers splitting off and wanting to go with Bjorn, whilst the other one wants to head back to the mainland to fulfill his goals of becoming king of all of Norway. So as Bjorn mentions the farming lands and how they should continue to grow and make this kingdom of theirs really flourish, Ivor kind of tries to appeal to the more bloodlusty side of the audience and continue their march of destroying English kingdoms and conquesting the land. Now this divide will definitely flourish a lot more in the next season, but it's really starting to make the stepstones for what's going to happen in season 5. So Ivar makes the bold move of claiming he will lead them in this new adventure of, raiding the kingdoms of England and destroying the land, and this is where Sigurd vehemently disagrees with him. He points out all the valid facts of how he's crazy, unstable, he's a child, he just treats things in one-minded way. This of course consumes Ivar in a rage, and he finally lashes out, throwing his axe across the table at Sigurd, and it seems from what we know, he's dead. Now I might cover more of Sigurd's death in the season review that I'll put out later, but it's definitely a very strange twist to the events in history and what happens, and it's going to really affect the story quite a lot. You guys can tell me what you guys think about this entire episode so far, and especially around Sigurd and what you think is going to really happen with his storyline, his history, and everything about him, since there's this really big realization of him getting killed by Ivar, and what that means for the sons of Ragnar. So one last thing before we end this review was about that bishop character. Now there's a lot of people telling me he's about these Knights the Templars or something like that, so that's definitely going to be a huge part of season 5, and the main conflict between Ivar and his attacking force and them trying to repel out these pagans. So I might be able to cover in a different video all about them and history and stuff like that, hopefully some point between now and next season. Also with the promos and stuff, we'll get a lot more from him, hopefully. So other than that, thanks for watching this review. It was a really awesome season. I'll have a season review out at some point, hopefully in the next week. You guys can read it for that, and you can suggest videos in the comments below of what you want to do, like standalone videos about characters and their history, what's going to happen next season, predictions, a whole bunch of other stuff like that. Anything you want me to do for Vikings as a video between now and the next season, put that in the comment section below, as well as your thoughts on this episode and the entire season as a whole. Other than that, I'll see you guys next time and in the comment section.